Hello everyone, my name is Priya Singh Rangey. I'm an assistant professor at the LG Institute of Physiotherapy. Today we'll be discussing about the physiological effects of heat. We'll have a basic introduction about what is heat, and then we'll be moving on to the physiological effects of heat, which will include the direct effects and the indirect effects. So beginning with heat is probably one of the oldest modalities that is used in physical therapy. We know that heat and cold both are the most commonly used modalities in physical therapy. Heat works on the principle of increasing the body temperature to gain physiological and therapeutic benefits. Heat transfer can occur through conduction, convection, or radiation. Conduction is the transfer of heat between two adjacent molecules. Suppose we are applying heat to one particular molecule, then because of the direct transfer of heat from this molecule to the adjacent molecule, there is an increase in the temperature, or there is transfer of heat to the surrounding different molecules. This method or this process of heat transfer is termed as conduction, where one molecule is transferring its own heat to another molecule that lies in the vicinity. Another method of heat transfer is the convection method. In the convection method, the molecule that is being applied heat travels from its own position to a different position, thereby transferring heat from one point to another point. So there is no transfer of heat from one molecule to the another molecule, but there is a movement of the molecule itself from one end to other end, thereby transferring heat from one point to the other point. This is termed as convection. The third method is the radiation method. In the radiation method, heat energy is transferred or transformed or converted into electromagnetic radiation form, and thereby it can travel long distances and cause a higher degree of heat transfer. So these are the three different methods of heat transfer: conduction, convection, and radiation. Now moving on to the factors that affect the effects that are produced because of heat. The first is the intensity of the heat applied. The intensity of the heat applied has a direct relationship with the effects that are produced. The higher the intensity, the more the effects that are produced. If the intensity of heat that is applied is high, it leads to a greater change in the temperature of the tissues. If the intensity is low, it leads to a lesser degree of temperature change. The second important factor is the duration for which the heat is applied. The higher the duration, the higher is the change in temperature. The lower the duration, the lower is the change in temperature. So again, giving a direct relationship between duration and the degree of change in temperature, and later on to the degree of the effects that are produced. The third factor is the size of the area that is treated. If say we are using a point source in order to treat an area that is quite large, then it will not produce an increase in temperature that is sufficient enough. If we want to treat a large size area, then we'll require a source of heat that is large in size. Hence again, a direct relationship that the larger the size of the heat source, the larger the effect that it produces, and the larger the size of the area that is treated, and if you are using a smaller heat source, the lesser the effects that will be produced. The fourth factor is the method of application. When we talk about methods of application of heat, we have different types of methods, like we have dry heating methods, we have moist heating methods, etc. So again, the effects that are produced will be depending on the method of application of this heat. The fifth factor is the depth of absorption. Depending on which kind of method we are using, what is the intensity of the heat that is applied, depending on what the duration for which is that it is applied, the depth of absorption is going to change depending on the method, that is which kind of radiation we are using. Like for infrared, will have a different depth of absorption. For ultraviolet radiations will have a different depth of absorption. So depending on what method, what intensity, what duration, etc., or depending on the properties of the tissues that we are treating, the depth of absorption is going to differ. Next, moving on to the physiological effects. The effects that are produced by heat can be either through direct effect of heat, or they can be through indirect effect of heat. firstly looking at the direct effects of heating. The first direct effect of heating is an increased metabolic activity. This increase in metabolic activity can be explained on the basis of the Van 't Hoff's law. The Van 't Hoff's law states that any chemical reaction that is capable of being accelerated can be accelerated by an increase in temperature. Hence, in the same manner, if we consider metabolism, it is a chemical reaction. Hence, when we are applying heat, there is an increase in the metabolic rate as well. The second direct effect of heating is the increased blood flow. Now, this increase in blood flow has several mechanisms behind it. One of the mechanisms is a direct effect of heat. When we are applying heat, there is an increase in the blood flow. That is a direct effect of heat. The second mechanism is that because of an increased metabolic activity, there is going to be an increase in the production of metabolites or waste products because of the metabolism. This accumulation of waste products leads to activation of the capillary and the arterial walls. Now, because of this activation of capillary and arterial walls, there is dilatation of these walls, hence increasing the blood supply. That is the second mechanism. The third mechanism being stimulation of the superficial nerve endings. Because of the heating, there is a stimulation of the superficial nerve endings. This stimulation leads to a reflex activation and reflex dilatation of the capillaries and arterioles, hence leading to an increased blood flow. So, increase in blood flow can be explained by three different mechanisms. The first being the direct effect of heat. The second being the metabolites which act on the capillaries and the arterial walls, leading to dilatation and hence leading to an increased blood flow. And the third being stimulation of the superficial nerve endings, which causes reflex dilatation of the arterioles, hence leading to an increased blood supply. The third direct effect is reduced viscosity of blood. Viscosity can be defined as the friction that is present between different molecules or two molecules of any fluid. As we know that when we are applying heat, the molecules are going to move apart, hence reducing the friction that is present between the molecules. And hence we can say that as a direct effect of heating, there is a reduction in the viscosity of blood. The fourth direct effect is change in the collagenous tissues. This we can say that as a direct effect of heating, there is an increase in the extensibility of the tissues. If the temperature that we are applying lies in the therapeutic range, which is 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. Hence, we can say that if we are applying heat between the range of 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, there is going to be an increase in the extensibility of the collagenous tissues. Because of this fact, we are using heat as a precursor for other treatments like stretching, mobilization, etc. The fifth direct effect is stimulation of neural receptors in the skin or tissues. As a direct effect of heat, there is a stimulation of neural receptors, primarily the sensory receptors like thermal receptors or polymodal receptors that are lying within the skin and the tissues. These were the direct effects of heat. Revising them: increased metabolic activity, increased blood flow, reduced viscosity of blood, changes in collagenous tissues, and stimulation of neural receptors that are present in the skin and tissues. Now moving on to the indirect effects. There are 5 indirect effects, the first being a rise in temperature of muscle tissue. As we have seen in direct effect, since there is a local increase in the temperature of the tissues, this again leads to an increase in the temperature of the muscle tissues, causing muscle relaxation. Secondly, there is a general rise in the temperature. This general rise in temperature occurs because of a local increase in the temperature. A prolonged local increase in the temperature can cause damaging effects to the tissues. Hence, there is an increase in the blood supply. This increased blood supply carries the heat that is present within the tissues to other surrounding body tissues, thus causing heat dissipation. This heat ultimately reaches to the hypothalamus, where it causes stimulation of the vasomotor center, again leading to a generalized vasodilatation and again causing an increase in the blood supply. There is also a fall in blood pressure because of the reduced viscosity, the increased vasodilatation of the tissues, the increased blood supply. There is a reduction in the peripheral resistance that is present. This reduction in peripheral resistance causes a fall in the blood pressure. The fourth indirect effect of heating is increased sweat gland activity. Because of a direct impact of the heating, that is the stimulation of the different neural receptors that are present in the skin, there is a stimulation of the sweat glands as well, causing an increase in the activity of the sweat glands and causing again an increase in the sweating activity. The fifth indirect effect is changes that occur in the blood and the tissue fluid. Because of an increase in the blood supply, because of vasodilatation, etc., we can see that there is an increase in the exchange that takes place between the capillary membranes, between the intracellular and extracellular fluids. This increase in the different fluids leads to again an increase in the different activities that are occurring inside the body tissues. This causes an increase in the exchange that occurs, ultimately reducing the pH of the blood, causing the acidity of the blood to increase, and also causing a concomitant increase in lymph formation. So these are the 5 indirect effects of heating: rise in temperature of muscle tissue, general rise in temperature, fall in blood pressure, increased sweat gland activity, and changes in blood and tissue fluid. To summarize it all, we can say that heat is one of the most commonly used physical agents. It can be applied through various techniques following different methods of heat transfer like conduction, convection, or radiation. And heat has both direct and indirect physiological effects which can be used therapeutically to gain various benefits. Thank you. See you until next time.